Hi, I'm Craig the geologist. I'm here with the one and only Rob Abram.
Just me.
And not filmed on the same day as the Huron Coastal Preserve, even though he's pointed out that I'm wearing the same shirt. Are you wearing the same shirt?
I don't have any idea.
I don't know. But we're here at Thompson Harbor today, and we're going to go check it out. Come join us. Thompson Harbor State Park is one of the most beautiful and undervisited state parks in the Michigan State Park system. And that is by design. I've got a real chip on my shoulder about that, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Thompson Harbor is located in northern Lower Michigan, just south of Rogers City off of US 23 on Lake Huron. It is publicly accessible, and it's not very hard to reach despite the lack of signage. Most of the park is made up of swampy forest lands and wetlands, and therein lie a number of threatened and vulnerable species. Along the shoreline, you have dwarf lake irises, a federally protected wildflower. The real gem for rockhounds, though, is the shore. Miles and miles of rocky shoreline that you can hunt. And that's what we're here to look at today. All right.
I think that taller one is purple loosestrife, which is invasive.
Oh, okay. Well, it's pretty invasive, I guess.
It is. I think that's what it is.
Any idea what that red one was?
I think cardinal flower.
Cardinal flower, all right.
I'm not, don't quote me on that. Well, you can quote me if you want, but I might be wrong.
I better be okay to quote you. I got you on camera saying it's a cardinal flower.
See the heron?
Oh, yeah. Nice. That's a blue heron up there.
Oh, you're filming now?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
I can edit out whatever of that you like, but
I don't care.
I like to get a little bit of hiking in content and whatnot, and so figure since I turned the camera on for the flowers, I could get a little bit of walking downstream. Oh wow, is this it here? I thought we had, I know you said it wasn't much of a hike, but I thought we had more of a hike than that. I mean, we're right at the shore already.
Oh yeah.
So there are a couple of places at Thompson Harbor State Park from which you can access the beach. From where I visited in the past, you have about a 1 mile hike through beautiful forest, fields of lady slipper orchids, and thousands of deer fly. From here though, it's really only a 2-minute walk through ankle deep stream water, and you're there.
Beautiful day.
It is. We do have rocks, so they look awfully gray.
Yeah, I think they'll get better.
You think we do a limestone beach? Oh, yeah. Rob's doing the right thing. Oh,
somebody shot a hole through that one.
Well, someone does not like that beer. That's the old classic line from The Jerk. Somebody hates these cans. All right, well, Rob promised me colorful rocks out here. I trust we'll find some, but he said he doesn't usually find too much fossil out here, but have a look at that really nice Stromatopoid right there. Where you have gray, boring looking rocks, at least boring as far as color goes, that's usually a place where you can find some interesting fossils. Now this Stromatopoid is very curious, so have a look at the patterning on this. You see these thin layers here? Stromatopoid is Greek. If you'll recall my video about Stromatopoids, it's Greek. It means basically layered porous thingy. and that's what you're seeing here. You're seeing these porous layers, very finely layered, Well, then take a look at this. There's a gap here, and there's whatever this fossil is right in the center. Well, Stromatopoids were sponges that they would grow atop of other organisms, either living or dead. And so at the core of a lot of them, you will find a shell or a coral of a different variety. And that's what you're seeing here. What you're seeing is the core of the Stromatopoid growing atop of something else, and then the concentric rings going out from that. So you're seeing a nice little cross section of it there. That's the beauty of a Stromatopoid. I might take that back home. All right, I picked this guy up just now. It's kind of an interesting one here. So this is nice. You can tell from the banding on that. Perhaps the banding is more obvious if you turn it over. You can see that nice, literally nice banding on there. But it's awfully beautifully silicified in here also. I don't know, it's just beautifully smooth. So when you're trying to identify a gneiss, what you're going to be looking for are black and white bands. And the black minerals are going to be generally small, often flaky looking. There might be some micas in there, along with various amphiboles. And then you'll have light colored bands of feldspar and quartz. I just found this to be a particularly beautiful one. I didn't even notice all that up there. That's awfully beautiful. All right, well, in this world of gray rocks, there are still interesting things to be found. There we go. We got a looks to be a siltstone with some sedimentary layers in it. Siltstone, related to mudstone. It's going to feel very smooth to touch, maybe the tiniest bit grainy, but you're not really going to feel those grains because generally the grains are going to be smaller than the grooves of your fingerprints. So that will that really determines whether something has a silky or a rough feel, is how large are the grains relative to the size of the grooves of your fingerprints. And so this guy is pretty smooth feeling and brown, and no visible grains. So that tells me this is a siltstone or a mudstone, and you can see those layers in there preserved. What else have we got around here? Well, we see a lot of limestones. There might be faint fossilization in a lot of these, and we got some granite here.
I think that's a really weathered chert.
There.
Is that
oh
chert?
Yeah, that's a
super
nice
weathered
chert nodule there. Interesting, random break patterns in that. A lot of people will be inclined to see something like this in here and like, oh, what caused that? Is that like a footprint or carved? Nah, you get random breaks in these things. But yeah, that's a nice chert nodule.
I don't want it.
That's all right.
We'll leave that right there.
We'll leave that for one of you guys. We have limestone here with a lot of bubbles in it. That's usually associated with hydrocarbons. The hydrocarbons, natural gas, a bit of oil. Not enough to really make this major fossil fuel producing region. But when that stuff makes it to the surface, it weathers out quickly, and you end up with this pockmarked stuff. And some of these limestones, when they're really full of bubbles like that, stink. They smell like oil. They can sometimes smell like rotting organic material, and people call them stink stones. How's this one smell? Smells like a rock. Over here, we got a couple of varieties of granite. Oh, got a pink granite here. It's got a lot of alkali feldspar in it. Creates that pink color. Over here, Well, it looks like it's another granite. This band makes me wonder whether this might have been granite texture in a Migmatite. If you haven't seen my Migmatite video, go check it out. Over here we've got a very differently colored granite. This one quite a bit lighter, much more yellow. That's just a different variety of feldspar in there. Granites come in a variety of colors, and that's due to changes in the feldspar type that's in there. Feldspars have a whole range of compositions, as do granites, perhaps more accurately referred to as granitoids. This is a quartzite. It's a fairly smooth rock. It's pretty well fused. I don't see too many relic sand grains in there. Does it look nicer when wet? Let's find out. Some of y'all have chewed me out for not wetting down my rocks enough. So I'm going to try to make y'all happy here. Let's go into the water. And trying to get an orientation on this thing, see if we can see some relic layering, but there seems to be stripes going in random patterns all across this. So that's probably in large part due to what this rock has been through on its journeys here. It got chewed up and tumbled by a glacier, and so it's had all sorts of impacts and trials and tribulations to reach this point. And so it seems to have maybe stress fractures all over the place in it. See, the difference between you and me, Rob, is you're looking for the most beautiful rocks.
I am.
And I try to pick up random rocks that grab my attention, just to teach people what they're looking at here.
Completely different focuses.
Yeah. So this is an interesting guy here. This is a confusing rock. I'm going to put you on the spot here, Rob. What would you say this rock is? It's okay to be wrong, because a lot of geologists would be wrong about this.
I think it's
well.
metamorphic.
Mm-hmm.
It looks sort of like gneiss, but I don't know if the red is correct for gneiss. But you got the banding of a gneiss.
You're confused in all the right ways there. I'm actually really impressed by that. What we're looking at here is a piece of Migmatite. And I've done a couple of videos about Migmatite. It's one of my favorite metamorphic rocks because it is so confusing. And it's a rock that forms just before the metamorphic rock melts. So it's the very last thing you get before it goes back to being a magma. And what you get in those is a mixture of textures. You get a mixture of metamorphic and igneous textures in that. And so what you're seeing here is very nice banding. This is definitely nice style rock, but this red feldspar you get in there, that's reminiscent of a granite. And so you're starting to get textures of granite and gneiss all mixing together in this.
So it's like an overcooked gneiss?
It is. It's an overcooked gneiss. If it cooked just a little bit more, it would have gone straight back to being a magma and probably recrystallized as a granite.
Rock hunting with my son-in-law, who's a geologist, and he's looking for interesting geology while I'm looking for pretty rocks.
Oh, yeah. Here we go. I go for the interesting geology here. Here, there's a lot of layering in this. I'm wondering whether we're seeing sedimentary layering or whether it's a stromatolite fossil. Because this is happening in what looks to be a... oh no, I don't like the colors in that. Okay, I was about to say I was leaning towards stromatolite because it's in a limestone, but there's dark colors in this. And stromatolite, you don't tend to have a lot of changes in color in the layering. So I'm going to say this is probably sedimentary layering in a siltstone. Yeah, I think that's what we're seeing there. There we go. We got another layered rock here, and it's broken in an interesting way, so why not have a look at it? Looks very similar to the last one. Again, I'm going to say more likely to be a mudstone with preserved layering rather than a stromatolite fossil. Kind of an interesting way in which it broke, though. It's kind of an oddball. Oh, what have you picked up there, Rob?
Just chert. I'm keeping my eyes open for banded chert. Love banded chert.
Yeah, so do I. That's that's an interesting chert nodule, though. Very well silicified, almost a little bit flinty in there. One thing that's always worth remembering is that our shorelines are very dynamic. They are constantly changing. Rocks get shifted around, they get carried by the currents, but the lake levels themselves change dramatically. A couple of years ago, my last time out here, the water was up by the, where's my finger here? It was up here. It was pretty much to the tree line. And now I'm walking across dry land that would have been about shoulder deep a couple of years ago. So the rocks we're seeing today, totally different from the rocks I would have seen 4 years ago. And you come out here next year and the rocks you see will probably be different from these just based on where the water level's at. Well, depending on how I edit this video, this may end up being a stripy rock themed video. Lots of interesting layered stones out here. And this suggests to me that the local geology, we are probably on an area with a lot of silt stones, fine grained sandstones, and some mudstones. Because we're seeing a lot of this sedimentary layering out here.
All right.
Here we've got a bit of coal. Rob already showed me another piece of coal. And this is the second piece we found right next to it. Now this is extremely lightweight. And I'm gonna go check out the difference between regular coal and coke. I was thinking it looks a bit burnt. And it's got a bit of a charred smell. So I was thinking it was a slag product. He was thinking it was coke, which is a basically cooked variety of coal that burns hotter and faster. As you said, basically the charcoal version of coal. This would not have come from here locally. This would have come off of a freighter, would have fallen overboard. And this stuff is very lightweight. You should probably be able to see all the bubbles in that. It floats, and so it would have floated to shore and ended up here. Here's an odd looking fella. That has got to be a fossilized coral of some sort. You see those, all those pits in there. That's definitely a coral. What kind of coral is that? Well, out here, your main culprits are going to be Petoskey stone, hexagonaria, or Charlevoix stone, your favosites. I'm not seeing real big hexagonal stuff on here. So this is probably a weathered out Charlevoix stone, a favosites fossil. Could also be horn coral, but I'm just not seeing enough of this. Definitely a coral variety of some sort. All right over here I see a couple of chunky rock varieties. What do we have here for our first chunky rock? Light colored with white minerals all running through it. This is interesting. But I'm seeing these kind of rectangular pieces in here that tells me these are phenocrysts. You see that there. So this is definitely an igneous rock. Overall, the matrix is very fine grained. That tells me it's an extrusive. That means it was a lava that was erupted at the surface, but it sure carried up a lot of crystalline material with it as it came to the surface. What kind is this? Based on the color, I might lean towards maybe an andesite or something like that, but the color could also be from weathering. It's been exposed out here for a long time. I don't have a rock hammer with me to crack it open. The fresh surface would help a lot. Looking at our neighboring chunky rocks here. Good God, Rob, you're standing on my chunky rocks.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries. These videos are very informal. I don't sweat it. Over here, here's a chunky rock variety, and this looks to be a porphyroblastic amphibolite. We're seeing those irregular yellowish orangey blebs of feldspar. If you haven't watched my video talking about chunky rocks at the Huron Pines Coastal Preserve, check that out because I talk about this in detail there. So if you want to be an expert on porphyroblastic rocks, give that a quick watch. And what we have here, we got, looks like maybe a gneiss right there. Could be a granite. And then we have a granite that's undergone some deformation there. You can see that stripe running through it is discontinuous. That would have happened while it was cooling. The rock would have maybe it went through 2 periods of cooling. It might have cooled a bit, and then another intrusion came in, warmed it up, and kind of made it plastic, so it deformed a little bit.
Got you another chunky rock.
Yeah, another chunky rock. I'll have a look at that guy. All right, here we have a tillite for sure. You can see a bit of sedimentary layering in that. You see the black stripe running through that for sure. And take a look at those fragments that are in there. We've got granites. At least the chunks look awfully granity, and they're very jagged. They've been mechanically broken. And so what you got here is, oh yeah, take a look at that granite there. Definitely a galganotillite. Now you can't call every tillite with granite in it that you find a galganotillite, especially if you're not on the Great Lakes. But in our region, they come from a unit up in Canada called the galganotillite. And these are a little over 2 billion years old. These are old rocks. These are not from the recent glaciation. These date way, way back.
They're from the same basic area as pudding stones.
Yes,
right?
They are. Yep. And then what have we got here? What's this messy looking rock? Let's find out what I'm looking at here. Now this one I thought was going to be a chunky rock. And now that I've picked it up, I'm starting to think that it's just a weathering surface on there. I don't think this is chunky. I think this is maybe a limestone with some very creative weathering. Turn off my camera too fast. All right. So there's another probably granite right here, but have a look at this chunky guy. What's going on with this one? This one looks like a real mess. I think what we're looking at here is maybe an extremely weathered gneiss. The black minerals in gneiss tend to weather out a lot faster than the light colored minerals. And that can create these odd textures in it as it basically falls apart. Yeah. And let's see what we got here.
So what you did is you beat me to the pretty rock on the beach.
I did. It's always a race to find the rocks before you do. But this is definitely what we would call a metamorphic greenstone. Now, greenstone in geology is a bit of a wastebasket term. Basically, it's a metamorphic rock that began as a basalt usually, and underwent metamorphism, and the minerals in it turned green, and it kind of makes it a green-looking basalt, and we call it a greenstone. There can be a lot of different varieties, a lot of different minerals in a greenstone.
Is that?
I'm not entirely sure what's going on.
Is that called variolite? There's a rock called variolite that looks sort of like that. I know, not exactly.
Yeah, you know, honestly, the texture on this has got me a little bit confused. I may go home and look that up, because that, Not so sure about that. It's a very interesting texture on that. Nothing very interesting on the back. I may wet this. I'm gonna go wet this. But very odd. There we go. Let's see here. So we're not seeing a whole lot new on the front side of this rock. I'm confirming that's definitely not a weathering feature on here. That's definitely something structural inside of it. How does the back look? A bit like the front. We can see that the texture appears to happen in a specific zone here. It tends to kind of die out a little bit. There's a little bit of it coming down here, but it tends to be kind of focused along the center of the rock. It tends to go, looks like it goes through the rock at an angle here, coming out over there. But I'm gonna have to look up what we would call that texture.
I'm going with variolite, or variolitic basalt.
Yeah, you know what? If I look it up and it turns out to be variolite, full credit to you for calling that one.
That'd be a thrill.
And if it's not variolite, I'll edit it out or I'll dub you over and make it sound like you got it right.
I don't mind being wrong.
All right, here's an interesting guy. If we're talking metamorphics here, take a look at this, either gneiss or amphibolite, I'm not sure, but look at the granite clinging to that. So this definitely came from a Migmatite or a Migmatite style rock. That's could have come from maybe a granite dike passing through. So there's always other possibilities.
Some more granite on the back.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, so we got what I would call a Migmatite here. Yeah, because there's granite running all through that. Good call, Rob. But yeah, but what caught my eye was just this black rock sitting there, and it looks like this guy comes right off, but it doesn't. He's attached. I like that one. Couple of chunky rocks here. We got another porphyroblastic amphibolite here. And then I took a step and saw another one over here somewhere. I thought, oh, I should film it. Where have you gone though? You're here hiding somewhere. Oh, here it is. Another porphyroblastic guy, porphyroblastic amphibolite here. And then, oh, over here, here's the one I was originally looking at. Here we have, is this an amphibolite or is this Tillite? It's a little bit hard to tell. But I think what we've got here is a Tillite. That looks very granity in that chunk there. I think we got a Tillite here. Honestly, they can be hard to tell apart sometimes, even for a professional. All right, I took another step and found yet another guy here. This one is plain as day, definitely a Tillite, because these pieces in here are looking very, very granite. I came over here to have a look at this guy. It's an interesting stripy rock. I think what we've got here is a granite. Yep, definitely granite. With some metamorphic features in here. Maybe it's a mixed up Migmatite of some sort. That's curious looking. You don't usually find structures like that in a granite. So maybe it's a Migmatite. But as I was coming over, I saw this guy. And I would really like to get him wet and see if he's a lot more interesting when we can improve those colors. Let's come on over here. And oh my gosh, I found the kind of thing Rob's usually looking for over here. Okay, we got looks like maybe a Tillite. This isn't your classic Tillite. This is definitely a Tillite. I want you to take a look at those clasts in there. None of them big, but all of them very jagged and kind of random and totally mismatched with what the matrix is. And that's classic Tillite. Well, there's a big clast up there. And this could be Galganda Tillite. I'm not an expert on the Galganda formation. I'm just saying this looks a little bit different from what you would normally ID as a Galganda Tillite, but it is certainly a Tillite of some sort. That right there, that view you're seeing, classic Tillite look to that. But while coming here to wash this off, what have I found? Well, hello you. Are you agate? You want to be. Ooh. We got another stripey here. What kind of stripey have we got this time? Beautiful. I think it's another of our mudstones or silt stones. That's a pretty one. Especially if we can get it in focus. Which I will do if it kills me. There we go. Let's break for a moment to talk about how this park is managed and my righteous indignation about that. While I tell this story though, I want you to enjoy these beautiful scenes of Lake Huron's Caribbean blue waters out here. The water at Thompson Harbor has a special clarity. You can see right through it. It's something unique. So several years ago, I was hosting events for Michigan Rockhounds, and I was working with the park office that manages this state park, which is not located at Thompson Harbor, but rather located at PH Heft. I'm not going to name check the guy in charge. His name doesn't matter. And in fact, this was several years ago. I guarantee he's not working there anymore because the rate of staff turnover at the state parks is atrocious. They get a new administrator on an annual basis pretty much. So I was hosting events at Rockport, which their office also manages. And I mentioned to them that I was interested in hosting an event here at Thompson Harbor. And he just started laughing and said, no, absolutely not. That's not going to happen. And I'm not going to give you the specifics of the conversation, but the short answer was he considered Rockport to be their, quote, sacrificial park that they try to divert everybody to. And Thompson Harbor and some of the other parks they manage, they try to keep off the radar to protect from the public. Now that rubbed me the wrong way right away because the state park system is created for and funded by us, the taxpayers. And so it's not to be protected from the public, it's meant to be protected for the public. He explained that they do everything they can within their legal means to keep people from visiting Thompson Harbor and several other places like the underground Akiak. They can't stop people from coming to these places. They don't have the legal right to stop people from coming, but they can remove signage, and that's exactly what they do. You'll find very little signage for Thompson Harbor State Park. And just this summer, I noticed all of the signs for the underground Akiak are gone. They're doing everything they can to kind of erase these from the public's knowledge. And that just isn't right as far as I'm concerned. These are places that people should be able to visit. And you can visit it, they just don't want you to know about it. I want you to know about it though. And as for my attempts to host an event there, they said they couldn't legally stop me from filing the paperwork, and they couldn't probably legally deny me that they were going to charge me a fortune, they were going to send a ranger to attend, and he said, quote, I will fine every single last one of your attendees for various violations we will find. We will find something that each one of them will do wrong, each one of them will leave with a ticket for several $100s. I guarantee you, we will make sure your attendees will have a miserable time. That was a straight out threat, and I was pretty ticked off about it. Obviously, I did not file the paperwork. The threat worked. I didn't host an event there, but I want y'all to know about it. And I want y'all to visit this place and other places like this. It's your right. It's your land. You should get out there and enjoy it. Well, Rob, are you disappointed by this beach?
Yes. So far. It might get better though.
Well, I was just walking here and found kind of an interesting fossil sticking out of the rock. Oh, that's like the third time I've pinched my finger. But here, it looks like we got a little tiny Stromatopoid fossil that's just rising up out of this rock. Hard to say if the core was in here and weathered out or if the core was down here and fell out, but kind of a beautiful little fossil the way it's kind of just nestled in there. It's a real beauty. All right, Rob picked this one up and asked me if I wanted to nerd out on this, and I said absolutely. So this is an interesting guy. We got a couple of rock types glued together here. We've got here a gneiss. This texture running through here, that's definitely nice. And some feldspar veins that look awfully similar to granite. I think we might have called these veins of granite running through this, which would make it a migmatite. Migmatites, of course, are rocks that have come extremely close to remelting completely to magma. And look at the left side here. It's pure granite. Now, when you have granite mixed into a migmatite, or at least granite textures, they tend to follow the textural form of the rest of the rock. This guy does not. This granite on the left is very clearly melted straight up through this. So that tells me that this was part of a granite dike or a small pluton. A pluton is a very small, well, not very small. A pluton is a magma chamber of any size, often very large. But this is telling me here that this was in place next to this. So this granite here isn't part of the migmatite on the right. This granite here melted its way into it. And you can see this zone of extra dark mineral along the side. You often get kind of what we would call sort of burnt minerals along there. It's a mineral style that we call hornfells. And at that point, I have dubbed it over because I forget what it's called. All right, so we've looked at a lot of stripy rocks here today. Here's another stripy one, but this stripy one's a little bit different. As you can see, it is not a perfectly flat stripy rock. There is a hummock in this. It is following the contours of something down below, which tells me that it's not sedimentary layering. Sedimentary layering is always flat. The rare occasions you get layering that is folded up, it's been folded tectonically, and that's not what we're looking at here. We're looking at what is almost certainly a stromatolite fossil. Lots of layers of algae, and basically it's a slime that coats rocks, and as sand and particles blow across it, the algae kind of grows up and around it, and it deposits layer after layer after layer. And so, you know, if it's growing on a rock or an uneven surface, you're going to have this hummocky texture on it as it grows outward from whatever uneven surface it started out on. All right, so I found a couple of interesting little rocks, not all of which I can identify. Here's a dark colored one that is reddish, but then also where it's wet looks a little bit greenish as opposed to black. It's an odd one. This type of rock is called, and I'm not sure. Right next to it over here we got a little porphyritic guy. It might be a diorite here. And we got a nice little layered rock here. This looks to me like it's sedimentary layering as opposed to anything fossiliferous. And then if we come right over here, we got a few granites on the ground here. Look at this, we got a textured Stromatopoid fossil. Stromatopoid sponges, as they grew outward, had spines that they didn't use for defense as far as we know, but were structural, that they then built the next layer of sponge off of. And so you get this lumpy texture on the surface of the Stromatopoid fossils. And over here we have a Migmatite looking nice. And then right here we have an awfully pretty Unakite. Look at all the green in that. That is a gorgeous pink granite loaded with some vibrantly green epidote. Beautiful Unakite. Well, here's a random patch of rocks. Got some interesting stuff here. We got possibly a gneiss here. That looks, yeah, I'm seeing a lot of foliation in that, so I'd call that gneiss rather than a granite. Over here, another gneiss. This guy here, ooh, I'm not so sure. This could be maybe a gabbro of some sort. Right here we got a real nice quartzite. That's those sand grains are real nicely fused there. This is a piece that Rob picked up. It's got some interesting patterning in there. Beautiful granite here. Lots of alkali feldspar giving it that pink color. Lots of bands of dark colored mineral in there. I don't think we're looking at Migmatite there. I think we're looking at granite. Over here we got a Tillite. What have we got over here? I haven't paid any attention to this guy yet. This is real grainy looking. This looks like it's a quartzite. This is definitely quartzite. You can see a few grains of material that isn't quartz sand. This is partially fused. Some of this is pretty coarse grained over here, but not coarse enough to call it a metaconglomerate. This is a quartzite, only partially metasomatized. I was just walking along and thinking, oh, maybe I'm done filming, but I saw this very pretty little Tillite right there. And then I thought, well, I can ignore that. And then this one looking even more gorgeous right here. I mean, have a look at that. Those beautiful granites mixed in there. A Tillite is a glacial rock. If you haven't learned about it previously, I've got a video that will cover that. But those Tilites, they tore up a granite as they moved, or rather the ice sheets that created the Tilites tore up a unit of granite and dumped those granite clasts all throughout the glacial debris it left behind. All right, well, thanks for joining us here at Thompson Harbor State Park. What do you think? Was it everything you dreamt it would be?
No, way too much limestone, but yeah, it was still a beautiful day out here.
We found some interesting stuff. It was worth coming out.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. It's a beautiful little stream leading in here, covered with many of the same rocks that you'll find on the shoreline.